Support for this program is provided by
The Women's Hospital delivers comprehensive health care to women and infants through inpatient and outpatient obstetrical, gynecologic, and education programs. The Women's Hospital, only at Deaconess.
And by Toyota Indiana, Pump It Up Evansville, Gigi's Cupcakes, and the Vanderburgh County Prosecutor's Office.
I'm Jade, and this is my mom, Jennifer, and this is my stepmom, Brandi, and that's my dad, Edward.
Jade's a really cool little girl, and she has a really unique life. When parents get divorced, it's not common for everybody to get along. And it was actually pretty hard to find a family to talk to because not a lot of people live this kind of life. And it took a long time to get there, years. And I'm so excited for you to hear the story about how they got to where they are today.
How long until you divorced? How old was she? She was just a little.
She was about 1.5 years.
Okay.
When we separated.
Okay.
And almost 2 when the divorce was final. She was almost 2.
So what was that 1.5 years like? I mean, you had this new baby. Obviously things progressed into a place where you then separated. So
right.
What was that like?
I stayed home for about 16 months with her. I took a whole year off and then through October of the next year. So I was focused so much on raising her, and he did a lot of extra work on the side. So my life had become all about her and raising her. And I think that's kind of what, because he was busy, working and providing for us, and providing, making extra money so that I could stay home with her because I didn't want to leave her in daycare as a baby. And so I think that's kind of what caused us to drift apart.
So, what was the relationship? Was it love at first sight? Was it fun? Did you like him?
Yeah, I liked him, but when I found out he had 2 kids, I was like, okay, well, this is just going to be fun. So I had just got out of a serious relationship, so I didn't really want to get anything going, So, but the more time I spent with him, the more I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is it was almost like he was made for me. We just complement each other really, really well. He always pushes me to be my best, and he made me feel like I was beautiful and like I was stronger than I thought that I was, and I'd never had that before, so that was really attractive to me. And then when I finally met his children, I fell in love with them because they were
Well, you
awesome.
told me on the phone that you didn't really want to be with somebody that had kids.
I didn't. But once I met them and I saw how he interacted with them and what a good dad he was, it just made me fall even harder for him because I'm like, oh my gosh, I want this. I want to be with him. I want, to have a relationship with these children. And now, I can't imagine my life without them in it.
So with children come exes.
Right.
Yeah. What is that like?
At first it was awkward. I remember the first time that I met Jennifer. I remember what she was wearing. I remember just kind of her body language and just how intimidated I was. And the scary part for me was knowing that he and she shared something together. They had Jade, and I didn't have that with him, so I spent a lot of time feeling threatened. And, you know, he would go pick her up, and I would ride along, but he'd go in the house, and when he'd come back out, I'm like, well, what took so long? What'd you talk about? Like, it was very hard for me to understand because I didn't have that experience with anyone else. So, and I didn't understand what it was like to have children and how much it took to, communicate in order to make things work until, it took years for me to get that.
The first time that I actually met her is when I was picking up Jade, and we had just bought this new house and flipped it, and I had only lived in it a month, but I had been able to pick out everything for this new house because we completely gutted it and redid it. And so it was awkward going to pick up Jade, and this other woman is standing in what was my kitchen that I picked everything out, cooking dinner. And that was really tough. And then, of course, I have such a young child, and suddenly here's this other woman in her life, almost as a mother figure. That was very tough, too. And I tried to make the best of it and never talked badly about her to Jade, because she would, come home saying, oh, Brandi did this, Brandi said that, or Brandi this, and inside I'm going, but I'd, be like, oh, that's great, because of course she was so young. She had no clue. She didn't understand anything. So I just tried to make it easiest for her as possible, even though I had a lot to deal with on the inside.
It can be a very emotionally charged procedure, and it depends on the people's personality and whether or not they feel that they have to penalize the other person. But if people take it in stride and they want to, do good for their children, then that happens. I've seen it both ways. I've seen people to be angry for extended period of times and never reconcile, and other people can do it right off. So if you can do that, that's the best thing for the kids. It really is. I've had people, both men and women, who have been so bitter when they come in that they can't get over it. And there was a lawyer that I was associated with for a long period of time and did a lot of domestic work, and he always said there are two sides of a divorce, the emotional side of it and the financial side of it. We can do a lot to help the financial side. The emotional side, you can try to talk to them and try to reason with them, but that sometimes you need to take that to somebody who's a professional to try to get over that anger.
How is divorce affecting kids?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. So there's been a lot of research in the area, and about 1.5 million children just in the U.S. alone are experience a divorce in their family on an annual basis. 1.5 million kids a year, right? So it's happening a lot. And what we know from the research is that the first couple of years are a pretty big adjustment period, and we can expect that we're going to see some bumps in the road with children who are going through a divorce in their family. So we might expect to see an increase in their anger. Sometimes they have sadness or depression around that, but it's not something that's going to be permanent. Usually children have about a 1 to 2 year adjustment period as their family comes apart and a new normal is formed. After about 2 years, most kids kind of return to baseline, and we see real good adjustment in the majority of children that come out of divorced families.
How did you feel about her?
I kind of avoided her for a while, and everything went through Edward. I remember when things started getting serious between us, and things would happen with Jade, and he would, call and talk to her mom and say, this is what's going on. He would never include me in the things that were happening because he felt like he was protecting everybody. But there came a point where I remember one night Jade was not feeling well. I think she had a fever. I checked her temperature, gave her some medicine, and Edward called Jennifer to let her know what was going on. And he said, I checked her temperature, I gave her some medicine. And I'm like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. I did. Like, she needs to know this because at that point we were engaged. But it was important for me to let her know that I'm here and I care and I love your daughter, and I just wanted her to see that. When you spend that much time taking care of a child and you put your whole heart into it, it hurts when you don't get that confirmation from the child, because I was never Jade's mom, and not that I wanted to be, but it was very hard. It was very hard.
How did Jade treat you?
Jade from day one was awesome. I mean, she was 18 months old when we met, so she doesn't remember life without me in it, which I think has really benefited us. But we just kind of have, when you carry a child, there's that undeniable bond that you have. But I truly believe that just because you don't birth a child doesn't mean that you can't create a special bond, and Jade and I definitely have that.
Honestly, I kind of hoped that things wouldn't work out because they were together so soon after we were separated. It was like I didn't want things to work out for them. Things better go bad for them too, because she didn't break up our marriage, but it was so quick that I didn't want things to work out. But the more that I saw how she treated Jade and, that she was loving, I thought this is probably the best scenario for my daughter, and, probably will bring stability. And so that was, I guess, my focus the whole time has been making things easier on Jade, because I had heard so many stories from my students about how they had been put in the middle of things, how between their parents, between their mom and stepmom, and, having to, at 9 years old, go before a judge and say who they wanted to live with. And I had heard so much of that from my students that I didn't want to put her through that.
Do kids pick up on what's going on?
Absolutely. Unequivocally, yes. Children know. And, I think that's part of our myth, is that we see families in a lot of conflict, and they have young kiddos, right, who might be in that stage where they're not really expressing themselves verbally yet. And we as grown-ups have this mistaken belief that the children have no idea what's going on. And they know. And they might not know verbally, and later in life they might not be able to remember or put together, the narrative of what happened. But emotionally and intuitively, they have a felt sense of what's happening in terms of those environments, especially when there's a lot of conflict or a lot of lack of safety, a lot of fighting going on. Even real little ones are going to be able to feel that and understand that something isn't right in the environment. We created them, and so we become their templates for how they're going to function in the world. And so our behavior becomes their model. So if we're behaving in a way where we're being underhanded and undermining other people and being disrespectful towards our ex, then we can expect that our child is going to be able to perceive that, A, and B, learn that that's our template for how we interact in relationships. And so from the parent perspective, I often encourage parents who are going through a divorce to consider, who do you want your child to be as an adult? And as best you can, behave in a way that models that person for your child. And it's not always easy, but it's also not the child's responsibility to help their parent through their divorce.
For Edward's first birthday that we had celebrated together, I had taken a couple of photos of Jade and blown them up and had them framed, and I had gotten an extra one blown up to give to Jennifer because it was such a good picture. And I remember Edward giving it to her and him telling me that I guess she was offended, or why would she do something like this? So a week went by and she had emailed me, and she said, thank you for the picture. That was really sweet. I guess she had time to process it, and that was kind of our first time that we interacted in any sort of way.
In my head, I feel like that was like a peace offering or something.
Yeah, like it kind of was, I guess. Even though I worked really hard at taking care of Jade and like being there for her in a motherly way, I never wanted Jennifer to feel like just because she was with Edward and I that she was forgotten about. Just because I remember what my childhood was like, and so I just worked really hard at I guess I gave her several peace offerings.
It was tough in a way because I didn't want to like her, but also in a way I was like, why is she being so nice? And why is she being so nice to me? Like, I know why she's being nice to Jade, but why is she being so nice to me? And realizing that she wanted to reach out and have a good rapport and a good relationship, it was shocking, and it just took some time to understand her motives. Is she just doing this to make herself look good to everybody else, or to please Edward? I didn't know about it at first, what to think. With Jade being involved in sports and things like that, we were together a lot. And so we would talk, and I think that's how things kind of developed, but I still had my guard up and, to not trust, or is everything I say to her going to go back to Edward, or is she going to use it against me? And I would say it's really just been lately that I've really started letting that down. Even though we developed a friendship and, have become closer. When we went shopping, maybe, I guess it was before spring break, we went shopping in Louisville for a day, and I felt more comfortable just talking to her, even though sometimes I was like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Is she going to go back and tell Edward I said that? I think that's when, and at Jade's basketball games, we started talking about some things that were hard for me to open up about, but I started feeling more comfortable and trusting her more.
Well, I remember when Edward and I got engaged, and I was present for the conversation that he had with Jennifer. He called her and told her, hey, I proposed, we're going to be married. And she told him that she was happy for him and that she was glad that he was with someone who loved Jade so much. Which to me was just like, okay, we're getting somewhere. Like, this is a good thing. When she would drop Jade off in the mornings for school, she would come in so slowly. We would just casually talk here and there. She was into fitness. I'm into fitness, so that was kind of our middle ground. She did Zumba, and so she invited me to come, so I went a few times, and then we did a flash mob together, and Jade went along. She drove. I was so awkward. But I'm like, you have to work through it, because even though it was awkward, like, I was still enjoying myself, but it was hard to find a balance. Like, where are those boundaries at? What's okay to talk about and what's not? Because my husband, who's my best friend, like, I don't want to do or say anything that would be detrimental to our relationship, and at the same time, I don't know that I really want to talk about the past, because I'm not sure that I want to know what happened between them. I kind of like to block that out a little bit. But anyways, just so time went by, and then we went out together one night with a group of people, and it went well. I finally got to the point where I realized, I actually have more in common with her than I thought. She's not so bad.
I definitely consider her a friend. And it was a few years ago that the first time we went out, she asked me, I guess it would have been maybe fall of 2011. she was going to her, I think, cousin's bachelorette party, and she's like, it's just going to be like my aunt, and, you know, I just want a friend there. And so she asked me to go, and I was just like shocked, like, okay, and I did, and, you know, which there were still ups and downs since that time, and that was 5 years ago. But I think we've come to a point where we can talk about things as friends instead of just about Jade and just about different things in our lives. Like, you know, I've talked to her about some of my dating experiences, and it's just, we've really developed a friendship.
It was so much harder to hold hatred for her than it was to let go and actually like her. And once I did that, like, I'm just so much happier, and I feel so much better, and I enjoy seeing her as opposed to before, when I'm like, oh, is she gonna be there? Ugh, what am I gonna talk to her about? Like, put on a smile, you know, just keep the peace. But it's not like that anymore.
It's been a relief to not feel competition anymore, but to feel like this is my friend, and we're both major influences in Jade's life. We both are mother figures in her life, and it just feels really good.
None of us, when our feelings are hurt or feel bad, want to like go out and just be like, oh, it's all good. None of us want that. But we also have to just be grown-ups and let our frontal lobes work and stop the bad behavior. And, you know, through those daily choices, it gets easier because kindness begets kindness, you know. And so if we're, you know, throwing rotten eggs at someone else, the chance that they're going to be kind in return is pretty slim. If we behave, at least in a respectful manner, hopefully we get that respect back, and it starts to kind of, the seeds start to grow from there.
Do you consider her an acquaintance or a friend or like a dear friend?
A dear friend. Yeah. It wasn't always like that. I mean, it's progressively been, you know, acquaintance, friend, dear friend. Jade had her first father-daughter dance this past year, and to me, I wanted Jennifer to be a part of it too, because I wouldn't want to miss out on my child's first father-daughter dance just because the parents are divorced or whatever. So we took Jade shopping together. We went and had breakfast together. And then I'd had a friend come over to do Jade's hair the night of the dance. So Jennifer came over and she painted her nails while Jade was getting her hair done. We were all just kind of sitting having a little powwow, and then we all took pictures together when Jade was ready and watched her and Edward leave. And it was just like really special that, you know, we could all do that together. We do birthdays together now. We didn't always, and Jade's excited about it. You know, when we ask her how she wants to do it, like, she wants to do it together, which is, it makes it worth it to me that, like, all of the years of jealousy, frustrations, trying to, like, prove to someone, you know, how much you love a child, like, it is all worth it.
I would just say you have to put your feelings aside, and even if you're just faking it at first, to be nice for your child's sake. Look at, you know, read stories or listen to stories if you need to. I can share some stories with you if you need to, of kids who are put in the middle and have to deal with this, and really look at how you're affecting your child and see the torment that you're putting your child through, because it is tormenting, it is heartbreaking. And if you will really look at that and put your child first and put your own feelings aside for a little bit and just try to start being just a little bit at a time, being a little bit kinder, see how much that will change things for your child.
I am absolutely in awe of this family and the pure willingness and the vulnerability to move through this in such a way where they came out friends. I mean, friends. I mean, some people can't even talk to each other in the same room 8 years later, and they are friends, and it's amazing. Dr. Ganas tells us that kids and children can thrive in divorce situations, but both parties have to be willing to be kind to each other and be nice to each other for the child, because it's not about you, and I can't imagine what that would be like. You know, I put myself in their situation, and the thoughts that came through my head was, what would the other woman be like? Was she prettier than me? Did she make more money than me? Was she funnier than me? You know, all the insecurities that I would have if some other woman were coming into my life to be around my children. I can't imagine what that would be like, but they worked through it. 8 years later, they're friends, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's absolutely doable, and I am so grateful for them sharing their stories.
It's never set in stone. Custody is never set in stone, even after divorce is finalized. So what will happen is that there will be, one of the kids will get older, will have some sort of issue or fight with one of the parents that was given custody in the divorce, and then the other father or mother that didn't have physical custody of the child will attempt to go back to court and gain back custody. And then the kids really become in the middle again. Unfortunately, but that's just the way that it is.
Support for this program is provided by
The Women's Hospital delivers comprehensive health care to women and infants through inpatient and outpatient obstetrical, gynecologic, and education programs. The Women's Hospital, only at Deaconess.